courtroom was quiet except for the sound of boots echoing on polished tile and the occasional shuffle of papers. On the left, a young officer leaned in toward his partner and snorted, stifling a laugh. He tilted his head toward the man sitting alone at the defense table, a calm, older black man in a plain suit. "This one's going to be easy," the officer whispered. "He's got no idea what he walked into." The man said nothing. His back was straight, his eyes forward, unmoved. Behind him, a military-style briefcase sat untouched. The judge entered and the room rose. The officers straightened, smug still on their faces. The man in the suit didn't blink. They thought they were about to humiliate another black man who wouldn't fight back. What they didn't know was that man had worn 4 stars on his shoulder. And he wasn't here to argue. He was here to teach. It was a gray, rain-slicked evening in Jefferson County. Thunder rolled off in the distance, the road slick and empty. A dark sedan, a few years old but spotless, rolled through the southbound lane at exactly the speed limit. The man behind the wheel was calm, hands at 10 and 2, eyes forward. He'd made this drive dozens of times, but tonight, red and blue lights filled his rearview mirror. He signaled and pulled to the shoulder. The cruiser stopped aggressively behind him. A young officer stepped out, chewing gum like it owed him something. "License and registration," he barked before even reaching the window. "This your car?" The man handed over the documents, saying quietly, "Yes, sir." "Huh," the officer muttered. "Mind stepping out for a moment? Got a report of a vehicle like this one, stolen out of Birmingham." The man stepped out without hesitation. "That's incorrect," he said simply. The officer grinned. "Oh, you sure?" He motioned to his partner. They searched the trunk, the back seat, even sniffed the interior like bloodhounds. Found nothing. "Guess we'll just call this a routine stop then," the officer laughed, scribbling out a citation. "Broken taillight." The man glanced at his perfectly working taillight and said nothing. "Go ahead, fight it in court," the officer called as he walked back to the cruiser. "Should be fun." Then they laughed openly, loudly as they drove off. But the man didn't fume, he didn't shout. He simply opened his glove compartment, retrieved a small black recorder, and hit save. Then he drove off into the rain. His name was Charles Mercer, retired general, 4-star. He'd led troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, advised Joint Chiefs, and delivered briefings to 3 different presidents. He had walked the halls of the Pentagon and slept on desert floors with his soldiers. But now he spent most of his days gardening, reading case law, and mentoring young veterans. You wouldn't know it to look at him. He dressed simply, didn't wear ribbons or stars unless required. He believed respect wasn't worn on your chest. It was shown in how you moved through the world. Mercer had endured worse than some roadside disrespect. But that day, something in the officer's smirk, something in the way he said, "boy," told him this wasn't about protocol. It was about power, and men like Mercer didn't let power go unchecked. He told his wife that night over dinner, "I'm not doing this for me." She nodded without asking. "I know. You're doing it for the next man they stop." And that was all that needed saying. Mercer didn't waste time. The next morning he reviewed the dash cam footage from his own car. Clear audio, perfect visibility, every word caught. He highlighted timestamps, printed stills, catalog tone. Precision was his habit. He dialed his attorney, an old friend named Raymond Price, and said, "I'll need your attention on this one." Then he made one more call, a number from a separate book tucked deep in the back of his file drawer. The voice on the other end was crisp. "Sir?" Mercer said only, "I'll be appearing in court next week. I'd like someone there." Quietly. Understood. He didn't ask for favors. He requested presence. That was enough. The morning of the hearing, Mercer didn't wear his medals. He wore a plain charcoal suit, black shoes polished to a mirror, and carried a leather briefcase with 2 pens, a notebook, and the truth. His face was calm, his hands steady. When his wife handed him a file on the way out the door, she kissed his cheek and said, "Be surgical." He nodded. "Always am." Inside the small county courtroom, the officers sat 2 rows behind the prosecution table. They laughed under their breath, one tapping his boot nervously, the other scrolling through texts. "He's here," one muttered when Mercer entered, and they both glanced up. He walked with quiet confidence, briefcase in hand, no entourage, just purpose. When called, the younger officer took the stand first. The driver was agitated, he said, refused to answer questions directly, made sudden movements. Mercer didn't flinch. Did you feel threatened? The prosecutor asked. Yes, absolutely. And that's why you conducted the search? Correct. His partner nodded from the gallery. The judge scribbled notes. Then Mercer was called to testify. He stood, walked slowly to the front, and swore in with no hesitation. The county attorney opened with skepticism. Mr. Mercer, you claim you were unfairly targeted. Do you have any evidence of this? Mercer gave a slow nod. Yes, I do. And have you made that available to the court? Not yet, Mercer said, and the attorney smirked, assuming it was bluff. That smirk didn't last. Do you have anything else to offer at this time? The judge asked. Mercer looked at her calmly and said, With your permission, Your Honor, I'd like to make a phone call. The courtroom paused. Go ahead, she said, slightly curious. Mercer dialed, one ring. Then the door opened. A tall man in a dark suit entered, walked briskly to the judge, whispered something into her ear, and handed her a sealed envelope. Her eyes scanned its contents. And just like that, everything shifted. The envelope contained verification from the Department of Defense, a formal statement of General Mercer's service record, his decorations, his conduct, his clearance level. Mercer didn't announce it. The judge did. Let the record show that Mr. Mercer is, in fact, General Charles Mercer, retired 4-star general of the United States Army. The room fell silent. The two officers looked like they'd swallowed gravel. Mercer sat back down. Do you wish to continue testimony? The judge asked. I do, Mercer replied, but I'll let the footage speak first. He reached into his briefcase, pulled out a small flash drive, and handed it to the bailiff. Within seconds, the footage played on the screen. Clear, undeniable, time-stamped, and calm. His voice was even, the officer's tone mocking, his language aggressive. There were no raised voices from Mercer, no erratic movements, just dignity met with disdain. When it ended, Mercer stood again and looked directly at the officer on the stand. Do you still maintain your testimony was accurate? He asked. The officer stammered. I might have misremembered. Or lied, Mercer said. Under oath. The courtroom was still. The truth had landed, and it landed hard. Mercer didn't rush. He didn't grandstand. He simply asked questions, sharp, calm, lethal. Officer Tanner, he began, do you remember the license plate of the vehicle you claimed matched the stolen one? Tanner blinked. No, sir. Then what exactly matched? The color? Yes. Black sedans are common, aren't they? I guess. Mercer turned to the judge. Your Honor, the actual stolen vehicle had a Florida plate. Mine is from Alabama. He paused, then turned back. You said I looked nervous. Is that standard grounds for a full search? We have discretion. Based on race? Objection, the prosecutor said. Withdrawn, Mercer said calmly. Then he pulled out another file. These are your department's guidelines on vehicle searches. Your own policy says probable cause must be articulable and specific. Nervousness is neither. The judge nodded slightly. Then came the audio transcript, every insult, every chuckle, documented and logged. Mercer placed the printed pages on the desk. This, he said, is what systemic disrespect looks like. Officer Tanner's mouth opened, then closed. Mercer turned to the courtroom. This isn't about one stop. It's about the assumption that some people can be treated however you like, because they'll never fight back. He sat down. The room didn't breathe. It was over, but Mercer wasn't done. Not yet. The judge didn't hesitate. Based on the evidence, this court finds the citation invalid and the officer's conduct inconsistent with department policy. She turned to the county representative. This incident will be forwarded to Internal Affairs and to the DOJ's Civil Rights Division. The county attorney fumbled his papers. The two officers slouched, eyes fixed on the table. Mercer stood quietly, gathered his things, and nodded once to the judge. No gloating, no celebration, just closure. As he passed the reporters outside, they surged forward. General Mercer, any comment? He paused. We don't fight battles out of ego, he said. We fight them for the ones who can't afford to. Then he got in his car and drove away. No sirens, no escort, just quiet thunder behind every word. See, men like Charles Mercer don't need to raise their voices. They've seen real combat. They've stood beside men dying for freedom and integrity. What rattles them isn't danger, it's disrespect. And when it comes, they don't argue. They document. They dismantle. They educate. Not for revenge, but for legacy. Mercer didn't just walk into that courtroom to clear his name. He walked in to leave a mark, a message. That dignity still matters. That truth, when spoken with clarity and precision, carries more weight than all the noise in the world. And sometimes all it takes is one phone call.